And a very good Friday afternoon, 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time. I'm Chris Pardo coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Also podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms such as, let's say Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and many more. I can go on all for the next half hour. We could talk about it. So we're on most of them. Apple, we're there. Spotify. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. We totally appreciate you listening. We made this change over to 12 o'clock from 4 o'clock. It seems like we've carried over most of the listeners from before and picking up some new listeners as well. Our numbers over the past 4 days have really been trending in upward direction. And of course, that all has to do with you guys out there listening to the show. So thanks again for listening. So the first day of the draft is over. I'll tell you, I and many people like myself, we really thought this was going to be one heck of a draft to watch. It really kind of fizzled, A lot of things kind of started falling into place. There was not much action. You had number 3. We finally found out who San Francisco was going to take. But we knew it was going to be someone. It was going to be a quarterback more than likely. It was either going to be Trey or it was going to be Jones or someone. We know that. There's no doubt about that. Nothing really happened until you got into the 10th, 11th area. And that's when things started changing, all right? Especially when it appeared that there's going to be 2 quarterbacks available at 15. I think New England realized at that point in time, there's 2 quarterbacks going to be available. We're going to get one of them. Because all the teams ahead of them or before them, there was only one other team that was looking for a quarterback, and that would have been Denver if anyone was looking at all. So they kind of felt pretty good. They were going to get someone. So they kind of just sat back at 15 and kind of waited and said, hey, whoever it is we'll wind up with, we'll be happy with it. So at 10, okay, first of all, at 8, the Carolina deal never materialized, obviously, because of as things started going along. And of course, then Denver came up, and instead of going for a quarterback, what they did was they took a cornerback. Now all of a sudden the Cowboys are on the board, and the 2 cornerbacks they were most interested in were gone. So they figured, well, where are we going to go? We're at 10. We like somebody else, and hey, if we could wait a little bit, perhaps maybe we can make a deal. Eagles called up, moved up 1 slot, which is not a 2 slots, which is not a real big deal at that point in time. And the Cowboys said, hey, the guy we like, we're going to take him at 12. We can get him at 12 just as well as we can get him at 10. We know the Giants aren't going to be looking for him. So, okay, we'll make that trade. In the meantime, the Eagles, what their thinking was, they knew the Giants were going to be going for the wide receiver from Alabama, so they decided that they wanted him as well. They moved in, jumped in, grabbed him, and of course the rest is history. Then of course the Giants, realizing that their next choice for wide receiver would more than likely be available later on in the draft, in that this first day, so they made a trade with the Bears, picked up a really fantastic offer that they got or demanded or whatever, however way it worked out, in that not only did they swap positions, got a choice in this year, they got their number 1 draft pick for next season. So the Bears really had to lay out a lot to get into that position. So they did, and of course, that was really the biggest drama of the night, was actually in that particular area. Then he had some little changes back and forth, but it really was an uneventful evening. We talked about it. Everybody's been talking about it for weeks. Oh, who's going to do this? So there's going to be a trade here. There's going to be a trade there. Everybody was kind of, what's going to happen? Well, as usual, the hype and everything else was much more than what really happened. It was fun to watch, but it wasn't a great draft as far as anticipation, excitement, things of that nature. It was really kind of droll throughout the evening, except that one little spot between 10 and 12 in that area that kind of made some changes, made some big changes. The Bears got a quarterback who looks like he may be the guy for them. We'll soon find out. So that's the story on the draft. When we come back after our first break, we'll go over some of the prop bets and kind of give you an idea as to how well they did. There were only two prop bets I really liked yesterday. If you listen to the show, one of them was I thought Surtain would definitely. His over/under number was 10.5. I thought for sure at going under, at least up to the Cowboys, somebody was going to take him. And it actually went earlier than we thought. And, of course, I thought there was going to be more than one running back. You had two great running backs in pursuit, and they both went. And those are really two that I really thought that had some merit to them, that a possibility of winning on with some fairly decent odds to boot. So, anyway, that's the story. So, we're going to talk about that later on in the show. Of course, as usual, we have 3 games to take a look at today as far as Major League Baseball is concerned. Yeah, there's other things going on in the world of sports, and one of them happens to be baseball right into the middle of the season now. We're getting right along, clicking right along. And so we got 3 selections on tap for today. We're going to take a look and see what the line movement is like on them, as well as finding out in which direction the pros are going on them as well. We're going to look at the Cubs and the Reds, Kansas City against Minnesota, and the Indians against the White Sox. Those are the 3 games that seem to be getting some action and activity. We're going to take a closer look at them. So if you're looking to bet any of those 3 games, sit back, relax, hear what we have to say. It may help you in determining which day you want to go. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. In the meantime, let's take a look at what happened yesterday as far as sports were concerned and betting in them as well. In the National Hockey League, the favorites, they went 6-4. Favorites have been doing very, very well in hockey so far this season. And, of course, there were upsets as usual. There were 4 upsets. The Islanders are plus 104 against the Rangers. The Devils were plus 105 against the Flyers. The Blues, a big 140 against the Wild. And the Flames, a plus 105 against the Oilers. Now, the over-unders, they split 5-5. The unders are now at 51% for the season. First period over-unders split 5-5. First period unders still lead, and they're at almost 51%. Keep in mind, the hockey so far this season, if you were betting favorites, you would have been doing pretty well. Meanwhile, in the NBA, there's been kind of going back and forth between the favorites and the underdogs. But the favorites did go 4-2 straight up yesterday, and they went 4-2 against the spread. But there were those 2 upsets. The Rockets were plus 14, getting 14 points, or underdogs, obviously, and a big, unbelievable $720 on the money line. The Rockets, with 14 points in their pocket, won outright, beat the Bucks, and now we're 720 on the money line, which means if you bet $100, you won $720. The T-Wolves, a 4.5-point dog, plus 160 on the money line against the Warriors. The favorites increased their lead for the season up to 50.6%. The overs went 5-1, and they increased their slim lead that they have. It's 468 to 463, and that's at 50.3%. So in the NBA, the big hit, if you had the Rockets, for whatever reason you chose them yesterday against the Bucks, 720 on the money line. Meanwhile, in Major League Baseball, the underdogs, they went 7-3, came out barking crazy yesterday. Biggest upset, the Brewers, plus 183 against the Dodgers. Anytime you're up against the Dodgers, there's going to be a big plus number coming up for you. The other upsets were by the Cardinals, the Cubs, the Orioles, of course, the A's, the Mariners, and the Rangers. The favorites' lead was now cut to 185 to 166. Of course, there were 16 pick'ems in that group as well. The unders went 7-2-1 with a push with Philadelphia St. Louis, which was at 7. Now, the as far as the unders, they still lead at 53.4%. So the dogs barking loud and clear in baseball yesterday. Favorites did very well in the National Hockey League, and of course, they did pretty good in the NBA as well. So that's kind of a rundown as to what happened yesterday as far as betting was concerned. I know you knew probably what the scores were, but of course, with the draft taking such a stage yesterday, and it will be today and Saturday, maybe you weren't paying that much attention to what happened in the other sports as well. So we kind of bring you up to date on that so you'll know how the favorites are doing and how the dogs are doing. So let's take that break, and when we come back, we're going to take a quick look and see some of the prop bets yesterday, how they turned out. We'll kind of give you an idea on those, how they did. And of course, hopefully you had some of them. So I hope you did very, very well. In the meantime, just a reminder, we take 3 breaks in the show. Each one is of a minute duration. So if that's the case, we'll be back into the zone in 60 seconds. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, also over on Blackjack TV, as well as Mile High Radio up in the Colorado area. And of course, we're podcasting on most of the major podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it, we're on there. So once again, thank you very, very much for listening. We totally appreciate your patronage listening to the show. And of course, if you want to get a hold of us, not very difficult. Just simply send an email. Send it to thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. Kind of like to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show. I know we've moved our time slot down to 12 noon instead of 4, and the primary reason for that was because we noticed baseball games were starting to be played in the early afternoon, and we wanted to make sure that you were given all the information to try to help you in becoming a better handicapper if you happen to be betting on one of those games that are on earlier in the day. So that's the story. Send us an email, thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of the show. Kind of let us know. Say, May, you talk too much about this subject, or you don't talk enough about this other subject. Whatever it is, we want to hear from you, because we've been doing the show for almost 5 years now. We're in a bubble here. We feel whatever we're doing it right, because our numbers have been increasing. But of course, we want them to jump even faster. And if there's something you can tell us, help us with, we'll be more than happy to appreciate it. And definitely we want to hear from you. That's the sportswageringzone@gmail.com. In the meantime, the first round of the 2021 NFL draft kind of came to an end yesterday, more with a whimper than a roar. We saw quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3, just like everyone expected. The dogs And of course, the Jags selected Trevor Lawrence as the first overall pick. We told you he was a minus 10,000 at the BetMGM. So if you had $10,000 sitting around and you wanted to pick up a quick 100, that was the way to do it. And of course, the Jets, they took Zach Wilson in the second round, in the second position, and not as bad. If you had $2,500 sitting around, you could kind of put that on there and pick up a quick 100 for yourself as well, because those things were pretty well set, especially number one. And you can tell the difference because one's minus 10,000, the other's minus 2,500. So there was always that little bit of maybe Zach Wilson wasn't going to be the choice, although it seemed like everything was pointing in that direction. But remember, earlier in the week, in a couple of weeks ago, whatever time you want to talk about it, the number one pick for San Francisco, it looked like they were going to take the kid from Alabama. But of course, Mac Jones turned out not being their choice, so it can definitely change. Of course, that was the story of the night. 49ers drafting Trey Lance, third overall. And the betting market for the third overall pick kind of got a big, drastic line movement over the last 24 hours leading up to and into the draft. Mac Jones came into yesterday as a minus 225 favorite to go third overall, but before it was all said and done, turned out being a plus 170 on the money line as a dog for the rest of the day. On the other side, Lance entered the day as a plus 240. So if you would have got in early enough, you would have been at the plus 240 mark. And he moved to a minus 175 favorite just before the numbers came out. So in the end, the draft day steam was correct. And that was a big steam going that, kind of flipped all over. The 49ers went with Lance. And bettors should file this episode. Keep it in the back of your mind as you go forward when you're betting on the draft, okay? Simply this way you look at it. Pay attention to late movement. That's all we talk about on the show, line movement, especially late line movement, because it's incredibly meaningful because it comes when the limits are raised to the highest that it can be. We've talked about how limits change, how they progress. The first day, I'm using the NFL as an example, Monday morning, the line is at a certain point, and actually the least amount of money you can bet is at that point in time. It may be a limit of $1,000 or maybe $2,000, depending on the house. And then as you go into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as you go into the week, those numbers start increasing so that on a Wednesday, if you wanted to make a bet, your limit is higher. Now, by game time, it could be up into the million mark. So it moves in that direction. That's when you see a big move, a steam move like that. It usually comes in the last couple of hours before the actual event occurs. So keep an eye on those kind of things because it's at that point in time on draft situations, especially where, things start leaking out. News starts coming out. The pros start finding out about it, and boom, in they come with that big money. So if you do your homework and you react before the books make their adjustment, you can really take advantage just by taking a look at the money line and the line movement of the particular teams or the players in this instance, as far as the draft is concerned. So here are some of the winning numbers in round one, okay? These are some of the prop bets, and this is we want to thank BetMGM for getting us these numbers. The under 18.5 for offensive players, that's the one that hit because 18 offensive players were drafted in the first round. Now, defensive players, the over 13.5 one because 14 defensive players were chosen. Quarterbacks, the under 5.5 one because 5 quarterbacks were chosen. And running backs, and this is when we kind of liked ourselves yesterday because the over was 1.5, okay? And they had 2. So there was a winner there. With wide receivers, the over-under was 4.5. It went over that number to 5. And as far as tight ends were concerned, that was an easy one also, because the under was 1.5. The number was 1.5. There was only one tight end chosen. That's all there was going to be chosen all last night, and we know who that was. Now, as far as linebackers are concerned, the over/under number was 4.5. It went over because 5 linebackers were chosen. 5 offensive linemen were chosen. So the under was 6.5. The defensive linemen chosen, 4 were chosen, under 4.5. Cornerbacks, 5 cornerbacks were chosen. If you had the over, it was 4.5 and you won. And finally, at safety, you had the under as the winner because the under was 0.5, 1/2. There were no safeties in the first round. Okay. There were others, Waddle selected before Smith. Meanwhile, on the plus side, that Pitt's first non-quarterback to be drafted was a plus 120, by the way. Okay. So, and again, those are some of the numbers. I could go on and on for the next half hour or more, letting you know each one how it turned out. I'm sure that a few major wagers you already know whether you won or lost, but just got to give you as a matter of record so you see what happened yesterday. So now it's on to Fade the Public Friday. So we're going to have a bunch of games to bet on besides betting on the draft. Okay, you got 15 baseball games, you got 8 NBA games, and you have 4 NHL games. So we're going to take a second break, and when we come back, we're going to look at 3 games that are getting quite a bit of sharp pro action so far today. We're looking at the Cubs against the Reds, the Royals against the Twins, and the Cleveland Indians against the Chicago White Sox. So let's take that second break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at those 3 games. We're going to see what the line movement is like on those games, kind of give you an idea as to which direction the pros are going in those games as well. So let's take a break, and we'll be back into the zone right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern time, 12 noon. Moved down from the 4 o'clock slot. And of course, like I said, the reason we moved from that position was because baseball games were starting to be played in the early afternoon. And now, of course, since we did that, over the past week, like tonight, the first games are in the evening. It was only one day where the games were actually in the afternoon. So thank you very much for listening. We're here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're also podcasting on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Music Podcasts, you name it, we're around. So thank you once again. Thanks for listening. So in the meantime, let's take a look at a 3 games in Major League Baseball on tap for tonight, starting to get some action as far as the pros are concerned, and of course, as far as the line movement is concerned. To start off with, at 7 o'clock, a little after 7 Eastern time, of course, you have the Chicago Cubs, 11-14. Coming down to Cincinnati, who's 11-13. This is the first game of a 3-game series between these two Central Division teams in the National League. The Cubs, they just beat the Braves 9-3 on Thursday. They cashed in as plus 120 as a road dog. The win snapped the 5-game losing streak for the Cubs. And in the meantime, at the same time, the Reds are just 2-8 over the last 10 games. Although they did just take 2 of 3 on the road against the Dodgers of all places, okay? Tonight, the Cubs hand the ball to Jake Arrieta. He's 3-2 on the season with a 2.57 ERA. While the Reds come back with their lefty, Wade Miley, he's 2-2 with a 2.45 ERA. That's how we take a look at the line for this game. It opened with the Reds. They were a minus 120 home favorite on the money line. The Cubs, they were a plus 110 as a road dog. Now, we've seen the pro money jump in on the Cubs, taking that plus money, and when they did that, it dropped the number from being a plus 110 to a 101 on the money line. The Cubs have value. They're a dog off of a win, and they're a dog with a line move that's in their favor. So road dogs are 15% as a return on your investment so far this season. The Cubs are also a divisional dog. They have a high total. The high total in this game is 9. And remember, historically speaking, high totals always seem to benefit the dogs because you expect more runs to be scored, okay? And it leads to more variances and some upset opportunities as well. So you usually get, when the dogs are favored, all of a sudden you get to see a higher total. The Cubs have owned lefties this season. They've gone 6-0 in playing against lefties. So in this first game, around 7 o'clock, the pros are on the Chicago Cubs. Now, maybe by the time you get ready to bet it, or depending, what part of the country you're in, it was a plus 101 last we saw, dropping down from being a plus 110. That's the effect that the pros have when they come in with their money. So this way you can see what direction it's going. So when you see a line go from plus 110 down to plus 101, there's only one thing that can happen that can make this occur, and that is the pros coming in with their money. So they're more than likely on the Cubs. They were lucky to get in at 110. 101 isn't bad as long as you win. That's the most important aspect. So again, the pros like the Cubs. The analytics point to the Cubs as well. Meanwhile, at 8 o'clock, give or take a few minutes, the Kansas City Royals, who are 15-8, go down to Minnesota to play a team, and they're 8-15. A mirror image, okay? Kansas City, 15-8. Minnesota, 8-15. Now, these are two American League Central teams, and as you can see from their records, they're going in completely opposite directions. The Royals are now 6-1 over their last 7 games, while the Twins are just 2-8 over their last 10 games. And in tonight's game, which is the first game of their series, the Royals start Brady Singer. He's 1-2 with a 2.95 ERA. The Twins are going to send out their veteran, Michael Pineda, who's 1-1 with a 2.42 ERA. Now, as we look at the line further, it opened with Minnesota as a minus 130 home favorite. The Royals are a plus 120 road dog. Now, right off the bat, as you look at this line kind of speaks volumes for you. Because if Kansas City has so much of a better record, then why is Minnesota favored? because the public is rushing to the window and they're grabbing the plus money with the superior team, the Royals. Yet we're seeing this line move further towards Minnesota. Went from being a minus 130 to a minus 140. What this means, the pros are what we call fading the trendy dog. Fading means staying away from, moving away from. You fade away. Okay. You're fading the trendy dog, who's a contrarian favorite, and you go the other way onto the Twins. That's the way it works. It's called fade the trendy dog. So in this particular situation, the pros are on the favorite, the Minnesota Twins. Now, the final game we're looking at is around 8 o'clock also. You got the Cleveland Indians and the Chicago White Sox. The Indians are 11-12. White Sox are 14-10. Now, both of these American League teams are in the Central Division, and they're coming into this 3-game series, and they're both kind of on the positive side. The Indians have won 3 of their last 4 games. The White Sox are 8-2 over their last 10 games. And tonight, the Indians are going to start their ace and their Cy Young winner, Shane Bieber. He's 2-2 this season with a 2.48 ERA. Meanwhile, the White Sox, they're coming in with their lefty veteran, Dallas Keuchel. He's 1-0 this season with a 4.32 ERA. So taking a look at this line, it opened with the Indians as a minus 140 road favorite. That's how it opened up. And the White Sox were a plus 130 home dog. Now, the public is betting the chalk with Bieber and the Cleveland Indians. However, despite all this action going that way and all this lopsided support on the Indians, they've dropped from being a minus 140 to being a minus 130. What this means, it's a sharp reverse line movement on the White Sox. The pros are biting on the home dog at the plus money. By coming in, they brought it down from being a plus 130 to 120 on the money line. Now, this White Sox, they have value because they're a dog that's coming off of a win, number one. They're also a divisional dog, and they're a dog with a line move that's in their favor. And finally, they're a home dog who made the playoffs the season before. So all the analytics seem to be pointing at the dog in this particular game, and that's the Chicago White Sox. We've also seen some over money coming in on the total. The total opened at 6.5, but the over has been juiced up to minus 120. So that means that some shops are thinking about moving up to 7. We've talked about this on the show in the past. This usually happens. First, the juice goes up, and then the juice gets to a certain level, and then they raise the line. So there's a good possibility that that number will go from 6.5 up to 7. The White Sox are going to lean on their bats in this one. Chicago's hitting .261. That's the third best batting average in Major League Baseball. And the Cleveland Indians, they're at .209, which ranks them third worst in Major League Baseball. So looking at these 3 games right now, the 3 games on tap for tonight, the pros and the analytics are on certain teams. In the early game, you've got the Cubs against Cincinnati. The pros and the analytics are on the Cubs. At 8 o'clock, Kansas City against Minnesota. The pros are on Minnesota. And in Cleveland against the Chicago White Sox, the pros in that game are on the Chicago White Sox. So that's the story on those 3 games for tonight. This way, if you're thinking of betting that any one of those games, and maybe you may think it's a little closer and the odds the way they are, and you say, yeah, I don't know, I kind of like the Indians, but now you're kind of talking about the White Sox and this and that. So perhaps what we tell you, which direction the analytics and the pros are going, it might help you to decide which team to bet on as well. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to tell you who to play, how to play. We're just telling you, hey, here's the information. You take it, do what you want with it, and it's there for you. Okay? Hopefully you can implement it in with whatever system you have. You may have a system that you're totally happy with. You've been doing it for years. It's making money for you at the end of the year. You're doing okay. Yeah, you're not making a lot of money, but hey, you're coming out ahead each year, which is fine. So you don't want to move or play around with that too much. But just by adding one other little token into the mix, it may even make it even better for you. So that's something to think about. Okay. So let's take our final break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at that little system that we've been working with, system, method, whatever you want to call it, like what we're doing today, telling you about what teams are being going in what direction. We've been working on it. We're going to give you a report on it when we come back. So you'll have a better idea as, again, which way you want to go. So just a reminder, you're in the sports wagering zone. We'll be back right after this message. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast problems. Yeah. Most of your podcast platforms such as iHeartRadio. Okay. We're also on Spreaker, Spotify, you name it. We're on most of the major ones as well. So in the last segment, we gave you the three games that we're looking at, close at, checking the line movement, some movement there, and which direction the pros are going in these three particular games. Now, we've been following these type of recommendations since the season started. And just to give you an idea, yesterday we had two plays. Phillies against the Cardinals. We had the Cardinals and won on that one. Detroit against the White Sox. We had the White Sox in that game, which was a winner as well. So we had two plays yesterday, had two winners. The day before, we had three plays. We had two winners. The day before that, we had three plays and two winners. And the day before that, we had three plays and two winners. The day before that, we had two losers and one winner. So anyway, just to give you an idea as to how this thing has been running. So if you add everything up from the beginning of the season, we've had 76 plays, 44 winners, 33 losers, for a grand total of 57.8%, almost 58%. Keep in mind, 52.3, 52.4 is the break-even point if you're betting most sports. Baseball, you can actually go below 50% and be on the profit column as well, primarily because of the money line and the plus side of betting on underdogs. Because when you bet on an underdog, you're on the plus side 95% of the time. Sometimes you'll have a game or a team that starts out being a dog. Let's say they're a 1.5 or a 2 point dog. Then by the time it's all said and done, they become a favorite by 1 point. Well, they were a dog to begin with, so they're really still a dog, okay, regardless of what the final outcome of it is. So you kind of keep an eye on things like that. You're going to be in the plus column most of the time, especially if you make a big hit on, the Dodgers, one of those where you're in the plus 240, 230 area. Now you can lose the next 2 or 3 games in a row and still be ahead. So that's the plus factor of the money line betting situation. So we'll go into more about that once we get out of this draft day. We'll have a couple of weeks to kind of go into some of the little nuances of betting, kind of bring you up to date on some things like that. Like Friday, we're calling, it's not my idea, it's Josh Applebaum. Josh is over at the VSIN. That's the Vegas Sports Information Network, and he calls Friday Fade the Public Friday. The reason why he says that is primarily because Friday, and still in most instances, it's payday for a lot of people, okay? So that day, they're flush with money. They're more than likely to bet on games on Friday because they're starting the weekend all over again. So you're going to have an influx, a larger influx of money coming in from the general public, which is what contrarians, as we here at the Sports Wagering Zone love to see, because we know what you guys are going to be doing. You favorite bettors love favorites. You love home teams. You love a lot of scoring. So if we kind of see you putting a lot of money in there, what's going to happen is our numbers are going to get better, okay? So if a team is, say, favored by 6. Let's look at an NBA game, for instance, okay? You take it at, say, the Knicks plus 6 against whomever. It doesn't make any difference, okay? Now, all of a sudden, it's Friday. The public comes in, and they move the line from being a 6-point favorite for the other team up to, say, 6.5 or 7. Well, what that happens is, now on the contrarian side, instead of having 6 points, now you have 6.5 or 7, depending on what it turns out to be. Okay, so that's why we say contrarian betting works in that direction, and that's why Friday we call what we call it. Okay, and that's fade the general public. So whoever the public is betting on, the numbers may be inflated. This is your chance to come in and do very, very well. So that's the story. We're going to talk more about that as the weeks come on, as we start getting some time. Then, of course, you have the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, so we'll be tied up with that for a while. But then we'll have a little bit of a break before the camps open up for the NFL. We can start going into telling you about some of these nuances, little sidelines about betting that might be of some help to you as well. Once again, looking at the 3 games for tonight. On tap, you have the Cubs against the Reds. And in that particular game, the pros and the analytics are on the Cubs. Kansas City and Minnesota. In that game, the pros are on Minnesota. Cleveland against the White Sox. In that particular game, the pros are on the Chicago White Sox, up against probably one of the best pitchers in the American League. But that's what you're doing. When you're betting as a contrarian, most of the time you're going against someone who's like the best in the league or one of the best in the league. That's why they get all those high numbers on their side. Of course, we're looking for that upset, that possibility that something may happen. It does happen every now and then. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. Hope you have a very pleasant Friday. I hope you did very well yesterday as far as the draft is concerned. Some things kind of fell into place. Other things kind of stretched a little bit. It's kind of a crapshoot either way you look at it, but there's more of it coming today. So there'll be 2 rounds chosen today, the second and third. It's going to be starting even earlier. It'll start an hour earlier than yesterday to get those 2 rounds in. So thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again Saturday tomorrow. Saturdays and Sundays, we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday. So I hope you have a very pleasant Friday. It's the end of the week. I hope you have a profitable one tonight. I hope you had a profitable one yesterday. We want to see you making money. That's what the idea of the show is, try to help you to be on the plus side. So until tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'm Chris Pardo. We'll be coming back to you live on the I-95 Sports and Radio Network, live from Charlotte, North Carolina. So until tomorrow at 11 a.m., have a very, very pleasant Friday. But more than that, have a profitable one as well. Goodbye, everybody.